evening, everyone. This is Greg Thompson, your host of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and tonight we are coming in with Russell Brown, the draft expert down there on site in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. Russell, how are we doing tonight?
Greg, we're doing good, man. How are you?
Good, really good. It's been an interesting evening, kind of following from afar. Everybody's looking at all of the tweets coming out, all the videos that everybody's sending out, and just kind of getting excited about what's happening down there.
Yeah, man, it's been a pretty intriguing week. The Wednesday practice got canceled for the media because of the terrible rain, but stayed up to date as much as we could. We could watch it like through ESPNU and stuff. So we watched bits and pieces of what we could, and it wasn't too bad there. But overall, it's a great experience. And Tuesday and today were good days of practices.
Awesome. I know I've been glued to yours and Eric's and Jordan's Twitter for the last couple of days. So we could actually start out with one of those. You had sent out a message here in the last little bit about some of the players you saw stood out first on the offensive side. So obviously from a Buffalo standpoint, we're looking at both the offensive line and then the receiver group. So we'll start with the receivers. I know a lot of people want to see catch radius and want to see big high point guys, and I'm certainly one of those, but it seems like some of the quicker, twitchier, shiftier guys are standing out. I saw you make some comments on Penny Hart, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. What did you see from those guys that really stood out?
Yeah, Penny Hart is certainly a guy that I think has turned a lot of heads. He's a receiver from Georgia State. He has been a guy that's been heavily utilized in the passing game stuff as far as crossing patterns and sometimes being a check down guy, but also a guy that can get vertical and run up the field. So he's very interesting. He's got a very nice build to him, despite being, somewhat smaller. He's listed at 5'8", 180, but, he's well built, well put together. He's quick, he's shifty. He has certainly done wonders for his draft stock. I don't know exactly where he'll obviously end up. He's a guy that I'm going to have to study now for sure. But he is certainly a guy that fits a slot receiver role. We were talking a little bit yesterday, Jordan and I, and he said Taylor Gabriel. And I said that watching him more today, I can definitely see that. Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina is kind of like, he reminds me of Golden Tate, just a guy that also will probably play in the slot quite a bit, but he is very fluid in his routes. He shows strong hands, and he is just very explosive after the catch. So he's been very, very good out of South Carolina. Another guy is Tyree Brady. I was very impressed with him just as, for his vertical ability. Jacoby Myers out of North Carolina State. There's going to be a lot of guys that I'm talking about here.
No, we got questions on Jacoby Myers. That's interesting. Some of the guys in the premium chat were asking about him.
Yeah, he's talented. He measured in at 6'2". He really looks the part of a receiver. I got a chance to talk to him. Very down to earth guy. Very informal and informative of what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish, because he's only been playing receiver for a short period of time. He's a former quarterback. But he seemed like he really knew the position very well. You guys can check out that interview on my Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. I also put it in the recent piece I put out regarding the North practice a few days ago. So he's looked very good in the middle of the field. I think he's going to attack the middle of the field a lot with the way he can break in and out of his routes. He's very smooth, and he's got really good footwork there. So he's looked very good. Some other receivers, Terry McLaurin has been just all over the place, guy that can really stretch the field. He's got some speed behind him. I like him because he's competitive as hell. I mean, he's been, matching up against guys like Chris Boyd and just, he's talking trash and running his mouth, but it's great. I love seeing that stuff. And when you can see it live, it makes it even better. So he's going to come in, he's going to compete wherever he goes. I think he's done wonders for his draft stock, and he's going to, definitely turn some more heads, I think, when we get to the combine.
That's awesome. And I know one of the things that I was interested in, especially seeing the video, guys like Deebo Samuel, Penny Hart, that you hear, hey, they're not as tall, but both of them have a really thick build. I think the Golden Tate comparison was really apt in that I think that gives you some confidence that maybe they can hold up in the NFL, where maybe you have some of those concerns with a Ray McLeod or even an Isaiah McKenzie, wondering, hey, is that a long-term fit in that role with such a slight build? But both Deebo and Penny look like they were really well put together.
Yeah, Debo is. I mean, his lower body's actually put together really well. I mean, he's got like thick thighs and everything else. Looks like he's obviously he's working out and everything. But yeah, no, these guys are going to be a lot of fun to watch. They're going to absorb contact, and they're going to be guys that you don't have to worry too much about their lower body and being those guys that struggle with the ankle injuries and the knee injuries. Now, granted, Debo has those injury concerns throughout the past, but I think he's going to be okay. So, I mean, he didn't show any signs of any injury history or anything like that throughout the week. So we'll see how he does.
Awesome. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, I know I loved watching the battles between Debo Samuel and Rock Yassin, and I've heard over and over again that Montez Sweat is simply the guy who's just head and shoulders above some of the other talent that's there. Who are some of the defensive guys that you saw stand out?
Yeah, Montez Sweat for sure. He's he's long as all hell, 6'6", 252. Me personally, I don't see how he, escapes past, the top 15. I would even say top 10. He's very violent with his hands. His length is really standing out. His explosiveness as well. Other guys, Charles Omenu, I've been a big fan of him. Eric got a chance to talk to him a little bit and brought up a question in regards
to Texas.
Yeah, out of Texas. He's also very long at 6'6", 274. He's got arm length of 36 and a half. So he's a player that's just big and he's going to fit in a lot of different places. He's versatile because he's played in a lot of different spots. Dalen Mack out of Texas A&M, he also stood out quite a bit. He played in the Shrine game last week and then was just a late addition to the Senior Bowl, and he really stood out just with his power and I don't want to say explosiveness, because I feel like I'm saying that about every guy, but he was very fast off the ball. But one of the guys that was the fastest off the ball was Renell Wren, defensive lineman out of Arizona State. He was just, absolutely terrorizing some offensive linemen on the first day of the practice. And then defensive backs wise, I thought Rocky Sin from Temple was pretty good. He did pretty well in some certain press situations and things like that. Lonnie Johnson caught my eye out of Kentucky. He's very long. He's 6'3". He looked pretty fluid in some of the defensive back drills that I was watching, and he did a really good job with playing over the top on some of these passes where he was breaking to the football and reading and recovering well. So there's plenty of defensive players and plenty of offensive players that have stood out and really boosted their draft stock this week.
Yeah, I think it's kind of tough for some of the defensive backs, especially some of those one-on-one drills. You see those guys doing 3- and 4-part moves that, when you have combination coverage, safety help, linebacker help, different guys, you can afford to shade inside or outside. I saw one that, I think it was Debo, where it was, kind of one of those whip routes where he took 2 or 3 steps to the inside, then took a nasty cut back out towards the end line. And it was really impressive, but what's the cornerback supposed to do? He was playing inside. He didn't want to get beat on the slant. And then obviously you're not going to go that hard if you have an inside safety or a linebacker. So some of those, I think it's a no-win situation for the corner, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of stuff where like the corners were playing like off coverage into the red zone or into the end zone, and the receivers were running like quick slants, and it was like, well, I get what they're doing, having them close to the football and seeing where their ball skills are and things like that. But at the same time, it was like if they lose, they lose. It's very rare that a guy's probably going to play that off on the ball. They're like 10 yards off the receiver when you're down in that spot. Another name, as I'm looking through my notes, L.J. Kaiir out of TCU. He looked really, really good all 3 days of practice. He measured in at 6'2", 280, really good wingspan at 81 and 2/8. I got a chance to talk to him as well. I don't want to be mean, but he didn't have the personality as other guys, but he was, I think, just really focused, and that was something that showed. He's got the ability to, with a long arm technique, to create separation on offensive tackles, and he showed it very consistently. Has that ability to translate speed to power. So he was a player that I think really stood out. I talked about him going into the Senior Bowl, and I'm glad he had a pretty good week as well.
Also, speaking of the offensive tackles there, I know that's a huge need for the Buffalo Bills. What did you see in some of the one-on-one drills and your discussions and interviews with the offensive linemen?
I'm going to butcher his name. I think it's Elgton Jenkins from Texas A&M or
I think
Mississippi.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, from Mississippi State. He was by far one of the best players here all week on the offensive line. He played center. He was playing a little bit of left guard. That guy, he's got sand in the pants, and this guy is just going to, push you back 2-3 yards on almost every single rep. He was doing a good job on combo blocks, getting upfield, taking angles to linebackers. Another guy as well, Eric McCoy. He's the center out of Texas A&M. Eric Turner is going to be probably watching him and breaking him down for Buffalo Bills fans. He was very intrigued by him, as was I. He has a very thick lower body. He was a player that, could get his hands up underneath your pad level and just turn you inside out and get, open tons of holes and create a bunch of openings for guys. Another guy as well, Chuma Edoga out of USC, was very impressive. He got better as the week went on. He was playing left tackle. He's also playing a little bit of guard. I like him all over. I don't really know you can go wrong playing him at left tackle or left guard. I know that's probably going to make you guys weary with Deion Dawkins and everything else, and where you're going to play him as far as left tackle or guard, or is he going to move to right tackle? But Chuma Edoga is also another name to keep an eye on. And then Dalton Reisner, I think, had a great third day, just from a football sense. Not every rep for him is clean. Not every rep is perfect. And sometimes, hand placement can get a little wild, and there's times that he's, pad level's too high. But realistically, I think he's just a football player. He's very vocal. He's got a chip on his shoulder. And there was a part where they did some one-on-ones, and he was really into, I think, playing for John Gruden. There was a moment where he kind of went up and gave him a shove, and they were kind of, hooting and hollering right back and forth. And then there was a rep where Reisner and Zach Allen got into it, and they got quite physical after the play. So, that's just, what happens on the offensive and defensive line. Of course, it's just odd when you see that stuff as teammates, but Reisner was definitely a guy that I think looked relatively consistent throughout the week.
That's awesome. I know he's a guy that certainly, like you said, plays with a lot of passion and attitude, and that not everybody loves that, but on the offensive line, I don't mind it. I don't think that you'd have any Tennessee fans ready to give back Taylor Lewan just because he's kind of a jerk.
Exactly.
I'll take that.
Right.
I know another area, obviously a lot of folks listening here for Bills coverage also have an interest in the UB Bulls. I heard that, maybe Tyree Jackson and Anthony Johnson going up against some big boy competition might have struggled a little bit. How are the hometown boys looking?
Tyree Jackson, everything's long with him. His release is okay, but it's just there's times where it feels like it takes forever. It's weird because he's got the size and he's got the big arm, but we're talking, split seconds for some quarterbacks. Gardner Minshew gets rid of the ball so fast. Jackson's not the same way. He missed a couple of throws high today. So I'm intrigued to see how he develops. I think he's going to definitely need a pretty good quarterback coach with him. We know that's the case with just about every quarterback, but with him, it's definitely going to have to happen. His lower body's a little crazy. He really likes to throw off that front foot and really plant hard with it, which is okay. But he's a guy that I was not a big fan of going into this, and I thought he should have stayed. I was happy when he was in the transfer portal. I know, Buffalo fans aren't going to like that, but I thought him transferring and going to a little bit of a bigger school would have done well for him. And then here he is, and he's in the NFL draft. And I'm not saying he was the worst quarterback out there, but, he didn't really separate himself. And then Anthony Johnson, he made some okay plays, but he didn't stand out in any way, which kind of concerned me a little bit. I thought he was going to do a little bit more. He made a couple of decent catches in the red zone, but he was still a guy that just didn't really separate himself like the other receivers that we talked about earlier. So it's really hard to say what these guys can do when there's they're just kind of right there in the middle of the road.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. Obviously, you get a lot of people that are obviously going to be trying to link them from a mock draft standpoint and assuming that it's a connection there, but you still need to make sure they can make the plays on the field.
Right. Well, and there's also that whole learning curve thing too. These guys go from, and I don't understand it as far as what is there really to learn? They run so much basic stuff, but you can just see some guys are very overwhelmed. Like Caleb Wilson, tight end out of UCLA today. He was in the North practice and was out there for the first go around, and we were on the field as they were warming up and stuff, and he was asking a ton of questions to some of the other tight ends, but also just there was times that you could tell when he was just stretching that he was like watching everybody, making sure like he's doing the right thing, which is fine. But some guys, just with short amount of time to prepare for it, you can tell that some of them are rushed and some of them are not, and some of them are thriving at just, natural football instincts and things like that.
No, I think that's a perfect description. It's hard to assume, like I said, whether that's a tight end who maybe didn't block that much or have to get down a 3-point stance, or a guy who played, some of these receivers that, that you hear about. I know it's an exaggeration, but some of them are like, hey, get open.
Right.
and they're not running even remotely all of the route tree. And all of a sudden now they're being asked to do these things. You can't expect that to transition immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a lot of it too is, you got guys that play in these small schools. I mean, granted, Penny Hart's lighting it up this week and only playing at Georgia State. Andy Isabella did very well, and he played at UMass. But again, a lot of these guys play at smaller schools, and not everybody has like that it factor right away. They got to, grow and learn into certain things. So it's always fun to watch, and it's sometimes disappointing when one of your guys don't show out. But at the same time, it's you get to see what their practice tendencies are. Are they hustling? Are they running around? So it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I heard that Andy Isabella is taking over for Hunter Renfrow as the guy that is already assumed that the draft rights are owned by the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, that I think was probably going to happen going into this anyways, but they both had decent weeks. I mean, pretty good weeks overall. Andy Isabella made some pretty good catches along the sideline, or at least one today for sure. Made a really good adjustment on a pass from Daniel Jones that was a little high and a little too far, but he made good adjustment, got both feet in bounds. And he's just very quick. I mean, you're talking wide receiver screens. You better bring the house because you're going to need, and you're going to have to take good angles when you're taking this guy down and having good pursuit and everything else, because he's a player that's just so shifty and so fast with that short area quickness. So as far as Hunter Renfrow, though, he's got some just really good ability to in and out of his breaks, out of his routes. Very shifty in that regard. Small hands. I mean, he's got like white, as I was joking all week long, he's got White Castle slider for hands. But I'm bigger than him, which is not a compliment. I'm not that big, but I think he measured in at like 5'9", 5'10", 175. The kicker, Cole Tracy from LSU, he measured in bigger than Hunter Renfrow. So it's interesting, but that guy's just a football player. That's one of those guys that he knows he's probably going to get destroyed, but he just battles and he works his ass off. So it's a lot of fun to see those guys. I mean, I definitely think despite being a smaller build for a receiver and playing at a bigger conference, and then a smaller build for a receiver playing at a smaller conference in a smaller school, both those guys are still going to get drafted, and I think they could be quite productive.
Well, I know a lot of people want to apply Adam Humphries to Renfrow, but I mean that's still, you're talking 2 inches and 20 pounds that Humphries has on him there. That besides obviously looking similar and coming from Clemson, it's not automatic that he might translate. But it's just a lot of clutch catches you saw from Hunter Renfrow over the years that you'd think that could carve out a place for him somewhere in the league.
Yeah, he certainly seems like he's going to be a possession guy, a guy that you see on third down that just absolutely pisses you off on every single play. But, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a guy with, hands that small. And, I mean, I was standing right next to him, and I was bigger than him. So, I mean, it's weird for me to even, say that because every single time I've gone down on the field, which in the 2 years, but I'm always, the smallest guy there. And you see that, and it's like, well, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. He put his helmet on and he plays with the pads on and he's making plays. So it's different. It's going to be interesting to see how he tests. I think that's going to be something that teams really wait for on him. And that'll probably give a really good idea on who you could maybe compare him to at the next level.
One last player before we take off here. What were your thoughts on Garrett Bradbury? I know a lot of people were really high on him. I know he had kind of some up and down performances. What did you see?
Today was the best week or best day for him of the week. Tuesday was really rough for him. I mean, he was getting knocked around, dropping, 2-3 yards in the backfield, not having the ability to anchor. Definitely one of those guys that you have to question, the sand in the pants term again. But he was somebody that we saw at the hotel lobby. And, because we were, the media gets that access and we're sitting there and looking at all these players, and you can kind of get a look for them without the pads on. And we were kind of taking down bets, what's he going to weigh in at? Because he didn't look like he was 300 pounds, and he checks in at like 304. So it was good to see that, but he looks, as we were talking, he looks a little bit maxed out. Doesn't look like he can add much to his frame, and he's a guy that is going to have to play with finesse. He's going to have to play with a lot of good technique and do a lot of those little things right, but it's going to be concerning when he matches up against those powerful nose tackles or guys that are in a one technique and are going to blow him up as a center. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to have to get stronger somehow. But overall, he played well today, getting to the second level, taking those angles, down blocking and doing all those other things. But I was a little disappointed. I'll be honest. I was a little disappointed. I thought there was going to be more from him, and it didn't happen. I mean, it's hard to say with the practice on Wednesday because we don't get to see everything. But Tuesday was disappointing. Today was a little better. So I'll leave it at disappointing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know that a lot of times center isn't a position that guys can immediately come into and start. So maybe his best spot would be somewhere with an older defined starter there where he can have a year or two in an NFL weight program and nutrition and fitness, get himself maxed out on his frame, and then be able to step in where, you hear people talk about the leadership and the intangibles and the football IQ, which is encouraging, but maybe give him a little bit of time to build up that sand in the pants you talked about.
Right. A good spot for him would probably be like a team like Atlanta. Alex Mack is getting up there in age as far as a center. I mean, I don't think he's super old, but
no, he's definitely I think he'd do his third contract now.
Yeah, I think he's about 31, maybe 32. And a few years ago, I know he played through a pretty nasty leg injury. I think it was a broken leg, actually, and he played with it, or a broken ankle or something. He played through something. I can't remember the specifics, but, I mean, that would be like an ideal situation where he goes and he plays behind a veteran guy and gets to learn from somebody. Obviously, learning from Alex Mack would probably be pretty good, but it'll be interesting. I don't know exactly where he'll go or where he'll fall as far as what round. I don't think he necessarily helped himself, but I definitely I don't think he's a guy that really jumped out to a lot of other people. I could be wrong, but as far as we are concerned, I don't think he was that impressive.
No, it's good to hear, and of course, there's guys that we're going to be excited about or going to make assumptions on, and sometimes, like I said, when you get in there with the best of the best here, it's going to show who's ready and who's going to be able to step in there right off the bat.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you for carving out a little bit of time for us. Tell the people where they can find you and maybe what to expect over the next couple of days in the Senior Bowl from you.
Absolutely. On Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. That's RUSS NFL Draft. Last few days put out some stuff as far as the North team practice from the first day. Today we'll be doing some stuff for the final day. Maybe a little bit of a Senior Bowl, just recap in general. We'll probably have something as far as like a standout. I know I will. And maybe we can get all the guys to do that to just get some more content for everybody. We'll probably do a draft podcast tomorrow and really wrap everything up into one for everybody on the Cover One NFL Draft podcast. And then it'll be just scouting reports and team fits and mock drafts and all that good stuff.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Again, it's been awesome being glued to yours and Jordan and Eric's and Christian's Twitter here. So we really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Hope you enjoy yourselves down in Mobile. Keep pumping out that premium content here. We love it, and we'll look forward to seeing all the more.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight. Quick podcast just to talk to some of our team down there in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Want to be able to bring the best content we can to you guys and understand what's happening and how that can apply for us here to the Bills and for everything else that Russell, Christian, Jordan, and Eric are going to put out there for draft interest as a whole. So you guys can check it out for whoever your favorite team is. But looking forward to that, and come on, check it out. Again, we're running a $10 premium subscription deal through the Senior Senior Bowl week here through the end of the night Sunday. Make sure you take advantage. Again, I can't express enough how often I frivolously waste $10. This will be the best $10 you can spend. Come and check it out. We'll look forward to it, and talk to you all soon.
Good stuff.